The sound of muffled sobbing drifted through the heavy wooden doors of Riverside Memorial Chapel. I stood on the marble steps, my hand trembling as it hovered over the brass handle. Inside, voices carried through the silence, familiar voices that I hadn't heard in 3 years. "We've lost Madison," my father's voice cracked with what sounded like genuine grief. "She's gone because she couldn't bear the disappointment she brought to this family." My breath caught in my throat. They really think I'm dead. They're actually holding a funeral for me. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouettes of people I once called family, gathered around what I assumed was a casket. My casket. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had declared me dead to them 3 years ago, and now they were making it official. My name is Madison Claire Hartwell, and I was supposed to be the corpse they were mourning inside that chapel. For 30 years, I had been the eldest daughter, the responsible one, the family's financial backbone, the one who sacrificed everything so they could live comfortably. The funeral home doors were just steps away, but the question that burned in my mind was simple. Should I walk in and shatter their carefully constructed lie? Let me tell you how I got here. When I was 12 years old, most kids my age were worried about homework and sleepovers. I was working 3 part-time jobs: babysitting the neighbours' kids after school, cleaning offices on weekends, and helping at the local grocery store during summers. Not because we were poor, but because my little brother Austin needed new cleats, new clothes, and private tutoring to keep up in school. "Madison needs to step up for this family," Dad would say whenever I showed the slightest hesitation about working another job. "She's the oldest. It's her responsibility." Mum would nod in agreement, counting the crumpled bills I'd hand over from my latest paycheck. "Austin needs this more than you need spending money, sweetie. You understand, don't you?" I understood, all right. I understood that being the eldest daughter in the Hartwell family meant being the unpaid provider while my siblings got to actually be children. By the time I turned 16, I wasn't just funding Austin's activities, I was paying for my younger sister Sophia's dance classes, piano lessons, and designer clothes that she absolutely had to have to fit in at school. My own clothes came from thrift stores and hand-me-downs from neighbours. "You're so mature for your age," relatives would say at family gatherings, watching me serve food and clean up while Austin and Sophia played video games. Such a responsible young lady. What they didn't see was me crying myself to sleep, wondering when it would be my turn to be a kid. The pattern continued through high school and into college. I worked full-time while maintaining a 4.0 GPA, sending home 70% of my earnings to help with family expenses. Meanwhile, Austin got a brand new car for his 16th birthday, and Sophia's sweet 16 party cost more than my entire year's tuition. College graduation should have been a triumph. I had earned my degree in accounting with highest honours, landed a job at a prestigious firm, and finally felt like I was building something for myself. The graduation ceremony was on a Saturday afternoon in May, and I had sent the invitation weeks in advance. I saved a seat in the front row for my family, checking my phone every few minutes as the ceremony began. The dean called my name and I walked across that stage to receive my diploma with no one there to cheer for me. Later that evening, I found out why. "Oh, honey, we're so sorry we missed it," Mum said when I finally reached her on the phone. "But you know how important Sophia's sweet 16 was. She only turned 16 once, and she needed us there." I only graduate college once too, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But Madison, you're so independent. You always figure things out on your own. Sophia needed us more. That night, I realized something that would haunt me for years. To my family, I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. The breaking point came when I was 25. I had just received a promotion and a substantial raise at the accounting firm where I worked. Like always, I dutifully brought my monthly contribution to the family dinner on Sunday, $800, which was nearly half my take-home pay after taxes. Mum took the envelope without even looking up from her phone. "Is this all?" she asked, her tone sharp with disappointment. "What do you mean?" "Austin needs money for a new car. The old one broke down, and he can't get to his job without reliable transportation." I looked around the dining room at the expensive furniture, the new big-screen TV, the designer handbags casually tossed on the counter. "What about the money I gave you last month and the month before that?" "That went to household expenses," Dad interjected. "You know how expensive it is to maintain this house." The house that I had helped pay the mortgage on for years. The house where my childhood bedroom had been converted into Sophia's walk-in closet. "I need you to take out a loan," Mum continued. "Austin found the perfect car and he needs $15,000. "A loan?" I stared at them in disbelief. "Mum, I'm already giving you more money than I spend on myself." "Don't be selfish, Madison," Sophia chimed in, not looking up from her phone. "It's not like you have anything better to spend it on. You don't even have a boyfriend." That's when something inside me finally snapped. "No," I said quietly. The room went silent. In 30 years of life, I had never said no to my family about money. "Excuse me?" Dad's voice was dangerously low. "I said no. I won't take out a loan for Austin's car. I've been supporting this family since I was 12 years old, and I'm tired. What happened next would change everything." Dad stood up slowly, his face red with anger. "How dare you speak to us like that after everything we've done for you?" "Everything you've done for me?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What exactly have you done for me?" "We raised you, gave you a home, fed you with money I earned. I've been paying for my own food since I was 16. I paid my own way through college while funding Austin's car and Sophia's shopping sprees. I've given this family over $100,000 in the past 10 years alone." "That's what family does," Mum said coldly. "Family takes care of each other." "Then why am I the only one doing the taking care of?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice like ice. "If you're going to be ungrateful and selfish, then maybe you don't belong in this family anymore." "Fine," I said, standing up. "Maybe I don't." I should have known they weren't done with me yet. 2 weeks later, I received the text message that would define the next 3 years of my life. It was from Sophia, and it was short and brutal. "Dad says you're no longer our daughter. Don't contact us again." I tried calling. The numbers were all blocked. I drove to the house where I had grown up, where I had worked so hard to help maintain. The locks had been changed. Through the window I could see them having dinner without me, laughing at something Austin had said. It was like I had never existed. That's when I made the decision that would save my life. If they wanted me gone, I would disappear completely. I transferred to the California branch of my accounting firm, changed my phone number, and started over. For 3 years, I built a new life. I made real friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I fell in love with a wonderful man named David, who thought I was amazing just as I was. I bought my own house, travelled, and for the first time in my adult life, I kept my money for myself. It was the happiest I had ever been. I thought I was done with the Hartwell family forever. I was wrong. 3 months ago, my best friend Emma Rodriguez, who happened to be a lawyer, was doing what she called social media stalking to catch up on my old life. "Madison," she said, her voice strange as she scrolled through Facebook on her laptop. "You need to see this." She turned the screen toward me, and I saw my own face staring back at me. It was my high school graduation photo, surrounded by flowers and candles. Above it, in elegant script, were the words, "In loving memory of Madison Claire Hartwell, 1994-2024, gone too soon." "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Emma kept scrolling. There were dozens of posts from family members, friends from high school, even my old co-workers. Everyone was sharing memories, offering condolences to my grieving family. Madison took her own life after struggling with depression and guilt over disappointing her family, read one post from my mother. "We tried so hard to help her, but she was too proud to accept our love and support. I felt like I was going to be sick." "There's more?" Emma said grimly. She clicked on a link to a local newspaper obituary. "Listen to this. Madison Hartwell, 30, died peacefully on October 15th after a long battle with mental illness. She is survived by her loving parents, Robert and Linda Hartwell, and siblings Austin and Sophia. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Madison Hartwell Memorial Fund." "A memorial fund?" I was shaking now. Emma's lawyer instincts kicked in. "Madison, when did you last update your beneficiaries on your life insurance policy?" My blood ran cold. "When I first started working, I never changed it after—" I trailed off, realizing the implications. "They've declared you dead to claim your life insurance," Emma said quietly. "This isn't just family drama anymore. This is fraud." That's when we started investigating. It didn't take Emma long to discover the full scope of what my family had done. Not only had they filed a fraudulent death certificate and claimed my life insurance policy, worth $500,000, but they had also applied for Social Security death benefits and even started a GoFundMe page for my funeral expenses. The donations were rolling in from people who genuinely thought I was dead and wanted to help my grieving family. "We have to report this to the authorities," Emma insisted. "What they're doing is multiple felonies." But I had a different idea. "What if we let them keep digging their own graves first?" I suggested. "If they're going to pretend I'm dead, let's see how far they'll take it." Emma looked at me like I had lost my mind. "You want to attend your own funeral?" "I want to give them exactly what they think they want. A world where Madison Hartwell is truly gone. And then I want to watch their faces when they realize what they've lost." That's how I found myself standing outside Riverside Memorial Chapel on a cold Tuesday morning, listening to my father deliver a eulogy for the daughter he had disowned 3 years earlier. The plan was simple. Emma would alert Detective James Morrison, who was already investigating suspicious insurance claims in the county. He would arrive at the chapel just as I made my grand entrance. We had been building a case for weeks, documenting every fraudulent post, every fake condolence, every dollar they had collected in my name. I checked my phone. Emma's text confirmed that Detective Morrison was in position outside the back entrance of the chapel. It was time. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped into the chapel where my family was mourning the daughter they had never really wanted alive. The sound of my heels clicking against the marble floor echoed through the hushed space. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Someone dropped a program. In the front row, I could see the back of my mother's head, her shoulders shaking with what appeared to be grief. My father stood at the podium, his face pale as he looked up from the prepared speech he had been reading. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Please, don't let me interrupt," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the shocked silence. "I was just curious about what you'd have to say about me." The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Someone screamed, others gasped and pointed. Several people fumbled for their phones, and I could hear the distinctive sound of someone starting a live stream. "No," Dad whispered, gripping the sides of the podium. "This isn't possible. Madison is dead. She's been dead for months." "Have I, though?" I asked, walking slowly down the centre aisle. "Because I feel very much alive." I could see my family now. Mum had turned around in her seat, her face white as a sheet. Austin was half standing, his mouth hanging open in shock. Sophia was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to figure out how to damage control this situation, but it was too late for damage control. "Ladies and gentlemen," a new voice called from the back of the chapel. Detective Morrison strode through the doors, his badge clearly visible. "This is the police. I need everyone to remain calm and stay seated." The chapel erupted in confused murmurs. Some people were crying, others were taking pictures, and a few were trying to leave, but found their way blocked by additional officers who had positioned themselves at all the exits. "Detective Morrison," I said, turning to face him with a smile. Perfect timing. "Ms. Hartwell," he nodded professionally. "Are you prepared to make your statement?" "More than ready." I turned back to face my family, who were now huddled together in the front row like criminals caught in the act, which technically they were. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Mum's voice cracked as she stood up from the front pew, her legs visibly shaking. "Madison died 3 months ago. We buried her. We had a service." "Did you, though?" I asked, tilting my head. "Because I don't remember being buried. In fact, I remember being very much alive and living quite happily in San Francisco." The chapel had erupted into chaos. Phones were buzzing with notifications as the live stream spread across social media. I could hear fragments of conversations. "Is this real? How is she alive? Did they fake her death?" Austin finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "Madison, is it really you?" "In the flesh," I replied, spreading my arms wide. Surprise! Sophia was still frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to delete the social media posts that had been collecting donations in my memory. Too late for that, I thought. Emma had already screenshot everything. "I don't understand," Dad stammered, gripping the podium so tightly his knuckles were white. "You disappeared. You never called, never wrote. We assumed..." "You assumed I was dead because it was convenient," I interrupted. "Tell me, Dad, how much money have you collected from my life insurance policy?" The colour drained completely from his face. Detective Morrison stepped forward, pulling out a small notebook. "Mr. Robert Hartwell, you filed a claim with Mutual Assurance Life Insurance on October 18th for a policy in the amount of $500,000 listing Madison Claire Hartwell as deceased. Is that correct?" We thought she was dead," Dad stammered. "Based on what evidence?" the detective asked. "She hadn't contacted us in years. We were worried." "Worried enough to file a death certificate without a body?" Detective Morrison's voice was calm but pointed. "Worried enough to start collecting donations for funeral expenses?" I watched my family's faces as the reality of their situation began to sink in. Austin looked like he might throw up. Sophia had stopped typing and was staring at her phone screen in horror. Mum had sunk back into the pew, her hands covering her face. The GoFundMe page alone has collected over $15,000, I said conversationally. That's on top of the insurance money, the Social Security death benefits, and all those touching memorial donations people have been making. We can explain, Mum said desperately. Madison, honey, we made a mistake. We were grieving. We thought you were gone forever. You were grieving? I couldn't help but laugh. And the sound echoed strangely in the chapel. For the daughter you disowned? For the girl you told was no longer family? Several people in the chapel were now openly recording. Mrs. Peterson from down the street had her phone held high, capturing every word good. Let them all see what the Hartwell family was really like. That was a misunderstanding, Austin said quickly. You never meant to get caught, I finished for him. Tell me, Austin, what did you spend my life insurance money on? New car? Down payment on a house? His face went red, which was answer enough. Detective Morrison cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to need everyone except immediate family members and the investigating officers to please exit the chapel. This is now an active crime scene. As the guests filed out, many of them shooting confused and disgusted looks at my family, I heard Mrs. Peterson whisper loudly to her husband. I knew something was fishy when they asked for donations. The Hartwells have plenty of money. Soon, only my family, myself, Detective Morrison, Emma, and 2 other officers remained in the chapel. Ms. Hartwell, Detective Morrison said, turning to me, would you be willing to provide a detailed statement about your whereabouts over the past 3 months? Absolutely. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my photos. I have pictures from my trip to Italy in November. Here's me at the Colosseum on November 15th, 3 weeks after my supposed death. I've got restaurant receipts, hotel confirmations, and about a dozen witnesses who can verify I was very much alive. I swiped to the next photo. This is from my company's Christmas party in December. That's my boss, Jennifer Walsh, and about 50 co-workers who would be very surprised to learn they were partying with a ghost. Emma stepped forward with a manila folder. Detective, I've compiled additional evidence. Madison has been making regular video calls with me every Sunday for the past 2 years. I have the call logs, and several of those calls occurred after the supposed date of death. This is all a big misunderstanding, Sophia said desperately. We thought she was dead because she cut us off completely. We haven't heard from her in 3 years. Because you told me I was no longer your daughter, I replied calmly. I believe Dad's exact words were, if you're going to be ungrateful and selfish, then maybe you don't belong in this family anymore. We were angry, Mom pleaded. We said things we didn't mean. But we never wanted you to actually leave forever. Really? Because when I tried to come back 2 weeks later, you had changed the locks. Silence fell over the chapel like a heavy blanket. Detective Morrison looked up from his notes. Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell, I'm placing you under arrest for insurance fraud, filing false documents, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, Mom screamed, lunging toward me. Madison, please, you can't let them arrest us. We're family. I stepped back, and one of the officers, gently but firmly, guided her away from me. Family? I repeated. 3 years ago, you made it very clear that I wasn't family. Today, you held a funeral for me without even trying to find out if I was actually dead. You collected money from people who thought they were helping a grieving family. You turned my supposed death into a business opportunity. We made mistakes, Dad said, his voice breaking. But we can fix this. We can pay the money back. It's too late for that, Detective Morrison said, clicking handcuffs into place. This isn't just about money anymore. This is fraud. And it's a federal crime because it involved interstate insurance claims. As my parents were led away in handcuffs, Austin and Sophia turned to me with desperation in their eyes. Madison, you have to help us, Sophia begged. We didn't know they were going to do this. We thought you really were dead. Did you? I asked. Because both of your names are on the GoFundMe account that's been collecting donations. Both of you have been posting memorial messages and sharing stories about how much you miss your dear sister. Austin's face crumpled. We needed the money, okay? After you left, Dad's business started failing because he couldn't pay his loans anymore. The house was going into foreclosure. We were desperate. So you faked my death. We thought you really might be dead, Sophia cried. You disappeared completely. No social media, no contact, nothing. What were we supposed to think? You were supposed to think that maybe, just maybe, you had pushed your daughter and sister too far and she decided to start over somewhere else, I said quietly. Emma placed a gentle hand on my arm. Madison, we should go. There's nothing more for you to do here. She was right. I had said what I came to say, and justice was finally being served. As we walked toward the chapel doors, Sophia called out one last time, Madison, wait, what about us? What are we supposed to do now? I turned back to look at my siblings, really look at them. Austin, now 27, who had never held a job for more than 6 months because Mum and Dad had always bailed him out. Sophia, 25, who had never paid her own rent or bought her own groceries because there was always Madison's money to fall back on. You're supposed to grow up, I said simply. You're supposed to learn how to take care of yourselves the way I had to when I was 12 years old. But we don't know how, Austin said, and for the first time in years, I heard genuine vulnerability in his voice. Then you'll figure it out, I replied, the same way I did. As Emma and I stepped outside into the bright afternoon sunshine, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. How do you feel? Emma asked as we walked toward her car. Honestly, free. I took a deep breath of fresh air. For the first time in my life, I feel completely free. 3 weeks later, I was back in my apartment in San Francisco, sipping coffee on my balcony while reading the morning news on my tablet. The Hartwell fraud case had made headlines across the state. Local family arrested for faking daughter's death to claim insurance money, read the San Francisco Chronicle. Funeral hoax exposed when dead woman walks into her own memorial service, announced the Sacramento Bee. Emma called just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee. I have updates, she said without preamble. Your parents pled guilty to all charges. They're looking at 3 to 5 years in federal prison, plus full restitution of all the money they collected. The house is being sold to pay back the insurance company and the donors. What about Austin and Sophia? They're cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges. Austin will probably get community service and probation. Sophia might do a few months in county jail since she was more actively involved in managing the social media campaign. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but there was no joy in watching my family destroy themselves. "There's something else," Emma continued. "Austin called me yesterday. He wants to talk to you." "About what?" "He didn't say exactly, but he sounded different. Humbler, I guess. He said he's been going to therapy and wants to make amends." I was quiet for a long moment, watching the fog roll in over San Francisco Bay. "Madison, you still there?" "I'm here. I'm just thinking." The truth was, a small part of me, the part that remembered helping Austin with his homework when he was 7, the part that had once loved being a big sister, wanted to give him a chance. But the larger part of me, the part that had been used and discarded and ultimately declared dead for convenience, wasn't ready for that conversation. "Not yet," I said finally. "Maybe someday, but not yet. I understand, and for what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. You don't owe them anything, Madison. Not forgiveness, not another chance, not even an explanation." After I hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time, thinking about the girl I used to be. The 12-year-old who worked 3 jobs to pay for her brother's cleats. The 16-year-old who went to prom in a dress from Goodwill because she'd spent her clothing money on her sister's dance lessons. The 25-year-old who finally said no and was told she was no longer family. That girl was gone. She had died the day she walked away from the Hartwell house with the locks changed against her. But from her death, someone new had been born. Madison Rodriguez, who had taken Emma's last name when she'd legally changed her identity the week after the funeral incident. Madison Rodriguez had friends who loved her for who she was, not what she could provide. She had a career she was passionate about, a beautiful home she'd bought with her own money, and a life filled with joy instead of obligation. Madison Rodriguez was everything Madison Hartwell had never been allowed to be. Free. My phone buzzed with a text message from David, my boyfriend of 2 years, who was coming over for dinner that evening. "Saw the news coverage from your hometown. How are you holding up?" I typed back quickly. "Better than I've ever been. Can't wait to see you tonight." It was true. The family who had claimed to love me had been willing to profit from my death. But the people who actually loved me had celebrated my life every single day for the past 3 years. As the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, I made myself a promise. I would never again apologize for taking up space in this world. I would never again make myself small to accommodate people who saw me as expendable. The Hartwell family had wanted Madison to disappear, and in a way, they had gotten their wish. Madison Hartwell was truly gone. Not dead, but transformed into someone stronger, happier, and completely unwilling to accept less than she deserved. I raised my coffee mug in a toast to the setting sun, to my new life, and to the beautiful truth I had finally learned. Sometimes the best thing a toxic family can do for you is let you go. 3 years ago, my father had told me I was no longer their daughter. Today, I could honestly say I was grateful for that rejection. It had forced me to become my own person, and that person was pretty amazing. The girl who had once been Madison Hartwell was dead and buried. Not in a cemetery, but in the past where she belonged. And Madison Rodriguez was very much alive, ready to write her own story from this day forward. In the distance, a ship's horn sounded as it passed under the Golden Gate Bridge, heading out to sea toward new adventures and distant shores. I smiled, finished my coffee, and went inside to start preparing dinner for the man I loved, in the home I had built, in the life I had created for myself. Some stories end with family reconciliation and forgiveness. This one ended with something better. Freedom, self-respect, and the hard-won knowledge that sometimes the family you choose is worth far more than the one you were born into.